All right, we would like to give a shout out to Camilla and Old Park Place for having us. This is absolutely awesome for us to bring our walking tour to you guys. To tell you about some of the stuff that we talk about, Appleton has a pretty crazy history of paranormal activity, but they've also had its share of heartaches. So we also talk about one particular block in Menasha that has a bunch of paranormal activity going on. So I'm going to pass it over to Mike.
I just want to see how she reacts.
I just want to say real quick too, we also belong to a paranormal investigation group called Paranormal Investigation Research Society. So in the off season, we go and investigate haunted places. On the table up here is some of the equipment that we use, so if you want to come by and take a look at it, feel free to do that. There's a thermal imaging camera, there's a night vision camera, a spirit box, a digital voice recorder, and then a K2 meter, also an EMF detector. So if you guys want to take a look at that, that's what's possible. We are. We really are. Yes.
Have any hauntings? We're free of charge. We don't charge. If something's going on at your residence, business, whatever, we'll take a look and see if we can find out what's going on. So, some of the tales we tell on our tour may scare you, some may frighten you, and some may terrify you. There's a lot about Appleton. When we started researching for this tour, there was a lot of stuff that we didn't even realize existed happened here. For those who might be interested in coming on the tour, we have 2 more tours tonight, tomorrow night. Tonight's tour, we are donating $5 from each purchase to Harbor House, which is a
domestic
violence. And then tomorrow, we are going to have Halloween horror trivia, and the person who gets the most correct answers on the tour is going to win a gift card. So, we've got a couple things going on for the last 2 nights of the tour this year. Now, when we go on when we do our walks, a lot of, some people expect when they come on the tour, we kind of say that strictly on the website that we don't go into any buildings, we don't do like any paranormal investigating during the tour or anything like that. And if we were to walk to all the stops that are on the tour, we're looking at 25 miles. So we kind of keep it in a generalized route in downtown Appleton. We do go to like 5 or 6 places that have actual reports of paranormal activity going on. But we don't go inside any of the properties because they're private property. But the first place we're going to talk about tonight actually is in downtown. And let me pull it up. It is the Zilke building. Yes. Bet you didn't know about the Zilke building, did you? The original building was built in the 1850s and was 2 stories tall. It housed a drugstore and a feed store. A 3rd level was added later on and had the Masonic Temple. Now, that building was destroyed by a fire in 1875. And that lot stood empty until about 1880, when they built another 3-story structure, which I'm trying to bring up here. These are very small photos, so I have to enlarge them. I apologize. There's the 2nd building. And that one had the Masonic Temple on the 3rd floor. It had a bank and a hardware store as well. Now in 1926, Irving Zilke, who was a musician, opened up a music store. He bought that building and he opened up his music store on the bottom level. However, that should not be there. However, in 1928, guess what happened again? We're going to show you what happened again because we have a picture of it. Yes, not good. So there it is.
It's in the winter.
Destroyed again. Yes, destroyed again by fire. So after that, Irving Zilke was kind of like, you know what, this whole thing with small structures, mostly containing wood, no, we're not going to do that anymore. So in 1929, he started construction on the current building, which had brass, steel. We'll go back to that first picture there again, because it's such a lovely building. So it's brass, steel, marble, and stone. Now, when it was originally built, there was only 7 stories. So you had the first 2 floors here, and then you had 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. In 1951, they added the top 5 floors to accommodate a growing Appleton, and that was Appleton's tallest building for 1 whole year until it was surpassed by the 222 building. That is the tallest building. That some of the things that have happened here, there have been reports of Irving Zilke's ghost seen throughout the building. Back in the 1990s, here I'm going to show you a picture of the inside. For those of you who have been inside it, it's so beautiful. Look at that. And now it's closed off, it's locked up, it's an apartment building, you can't get in unless you have access to it, but that's just gorgeous. So in the 1980s, there was a cleaning crew. Now, there were two people. One person was walking in front of the other person. The person who was in front was walking along, felt a tap on their shoulder, thought it was their coworker. They turned around, and what they saw was half of the torso and a hand disappear into the wall. In 1990 actually, there was a reception being held there. And, you know, Mr. Zilke, he loved his music, he was a big music fan. We will show you a little picture of his store here. He loved piano. That was his main thing. He loved playing piano. There was a reception going on at the Zilke building in 1990. So everybody was having a good time. Then all of a sudden, the piano player, there was a piano player there playing music, he decided to take a break. And as soon as he took a break, the elevators in the building stopped working. So people are scrambling around trying to figure out, okay, what's going on, why is the elevator not working? He comes back about 15 minutes later and starts playing the piano again, and guess what happens? The elevators started working again.
They're elevators.
So, you know, there's pretty interesting things. Irving Zilke he put his heart and soul into that building, and he probably just watches over it, you know. They've done a whole lot of remodeling since they've turned it into apartments, and I just kind of wonder if that might have stirred some stuff up, but I haven't heard anything as far as recently. So that's what we have on the Zilke building.
So one of the people we talk about is Harry Houdini. Can you guys hear me okay? All right. Harry Houdini always said he was from Appleton, but he actually wasn't from Appleton. He was born in 1874 in Budapest, Hungary, and he was born as Eric Weiss. He came to Appleton at the age of 4 when his father became Appleton's first rabbi. They left in 1882 when his father had lost his job. So they never really said why his father lost his job, but Harry always believed it was because in the synagogue, his father wouldn't speak English, he stuck to the classic Yiddish, and as they had more foreigners coming in, they wanted the translations to change, and his father wasn't willing to do that. So when they left, they did what most people did, they went south, and then they went east towards New York. And that's where Harry pretty much put his feet in full time. Now, we know him as a master illusionist, but that isn't how he started out. Harry Houdini started out as a magician, and his magic didn't really take off. So he was born Eric Weiss. How he became Harry Houdini at the age of 19, he took his childhood nickname of Harry and turned it into Harry. And then his last name of Houdini came from a French magician he admired by the name of Jean-Robert Houdini. So that's how Eric Weiss became Harry Houdini. At the age of 20 is when he married his lifelong partner, on and off the stage, Wilhelmina Bess Bronner. So Bess was his wife up until he passed. So Harry did a lot of other things besides the illusion. Besides being an illusionist. He tried out for the Olympic swim team, but he didn't make it. Even up to the time of his death, he could hold his breath for 4 minutes. I mean, that's pretty impressive. He started 5 films under the Houdini Motion Picture Company. He wrote 23 books. And he was the first man to get a plane off the ground in Australia. Harry Houdini had a very good friendship with a gentleman by the name of Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. Do you guys know who that is? Okay, for those who don't, he wrote the Sherlock Holmes novels. Harry Houdini was a mama's boy. He was very close to his mom. And when his mom passed away, he made every effort to attempt to reach her in the afterlife. So he saw psychics, fortune tellers, people of that nature. And what he found out more often than not was those people were preying on his emotions. So he called them out as frauds, and he had that as a lifelong ambition. But with that, it ended his relationship with Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, who had a very strong belief and those types of things. So now we get to what killed Harry Houdini. Harry Houdini was in New York, he was doing a show, and a couple of guys from McGill University came up to see him. And Harry had this ability to tighten his abs and then he would let people sucker punch him. So these gentlemen had asked him, do you still have the ability to do that? Do you still allow people to come up and just punch you in the stomach? And he said, of course I do. But they didn't wait for him to prepare, and they just started giving him blows to the stomach. So later that night when he was on stage, he started getting sick. He started running a fever, he didn't feel well. He wanted to finish the show, he didn't think he was sick enough to go to the hospital. The following morning he got on a train, he went to Detroit, which would have been his next show. However, when he got to Detroit, it was too late. They had to take him to the hospital because he had become so sick. So when they got him to the hospital and they looked at him, they realized that they couldn't do anything for him. What happened was his appendix had ruptured, and in the process, the poison had spread throughout his body, and they weren't able to do anything for him. So that's where he died on October 31st, 1926, at the age of 52. So just think of what he could have done had he lived maybe 20 years longer. Now every year on Halloween, people will go visit his grave. His grave is in Queens, New York. And they will break a wand over the grave, and that signifies that the magic has left the wand, because he founded the American Magician Society. Does anybody remember a magician by the name of Doug Henning? Yes. Okay, so Doug Henning was pretty big before David Copperfield. In 1986, Doug Henning and his wife Deb did a reenactment of Metamorphosis in honor of Harry Houdini. So if you guys are interested in watching that, it is on YouTube. But now I'm going to ask you guys a question. Do you know why they call Houdini Plaza Houdini Plaza? On the corner of Appleton Street and College Avenue, there is a fountain that says Houdini Plaza. That's where Harry Houdini's boyhood home once stood. So that's why that is called Houdini Plaza. That's where his house was. Now, over at the History Museum at the castle, has anybody ever been to the second floor where they have the Houdini exhibits? Okay, all right. Not all of his stuff up there. A lot of his stuff is owned by private collectors. Harry Anderson, the man that played the judge on Night Court, has quite a bit of his stuff. David Copperfield has quite a bit of his stuff. But there is some of Harry's stuff that's up there on the second floor. If you get a chance to check it out, it's really worth checking out. So the History Museum at the castle, when the Masonic Temple got tired of the Zilke building burning down.
In 1923 they built.
In 1923 they built what is now the History Museum at the castle. That was the Masonic Temple. That's where they moved to. So the History Museum at the castle, they probably have a ton of stuff that's haunted there, but the only thing that we could find where people were having sensations was when you go up to the second floor and you begin to enter the Harry Houdini exhibit, there's a plaster bust of Harry's head. And it's the only one that survived out of 3 that were cast. The first 2 crashed. That one is the only one that survived. So when people go out there, they feel like a disapproving presence, they feel cold spots, they feel nervous. So is there something attached to it? I mean, maybe. He always called Appleton his home. There's a possibility that there's an attachment to some of the stuff that he has there.
One quick thing I'd like to add is before Harry passed, Harry and Bess, they had a pact that they would hold a seance for the other one, and they would try to bring the other one back to light, to verify there was life after death. So what they did is they had a phrase that they decided upon. So after Harry died, Bess, for the next, I believe it was like 20 years, held a seance every October 31st, the date of Harry's death. Do you know what the phrase was?
Oh God, he was in the movie.
I believe.
Yep.
And they never heard it. Menasha, obviously, where we are right now, it's a smaller town. It's about, what, 13,000 compared to 75 in Appleton. But there's this whole block, if I can move that out of the way, there you go. There's this whole block, the 200 block of North Main Street, where there's just some crazy paranormal activity going on. Now the first place we're going to talk about is actually this in the picture here. blind pig. It's no longer there. The owner had passed away, so I don't know, I'm not sure what it's called right now. But when they owned that restaurant, they lived upstairs, and there was the restaurant downstairs. So, they would have reports of seeing apparitions from customers and employees in the barroom area and the dining area. When they were upstairs, they would hear what appeared to be commotion going on downstairs. Now, this was after the bar was closed for the night, so they'd have motion sensors that would go off during the night, and they were like, okay, what's going on here? So they actually called an exterminator, and they asked the exterminator, you know, can you find anything? Are there mice, rats, stuff going, running around? And he didn't find anything. So what was making those motion detectors go off in the middle of the night? We don't know. It would happen like reversed. When they would be downstairs, they would hear what appeared to be like footsteps and commotion going on upstairs. And nobody was in the upstairs part of the time because they were all downstairs working. So, kind of some crazy stuff that went on there. In the back alley doorway of that particular building, there was a death. Somebody was found deceased at the back door of that building back in the late 1800s. So, does that have something to do with the paranormal activity that's going on in that particular establishment? It's possible. The next place we're going to talk about is no longer there, sadly. They closed last year, called the Wild Apple. Now, the Wild Apple is like an artsy, craftsy type store where, you could have parties and stuff like that. And the owner would often talk about, she wasn't a big believer at all. She was more of a skeptic as far as the paranormal went. So, when things were happening in her establishment, she kind of just blew it off as like, she thought she would see shadow figures and things as well in her store. So she kind of was a skeptic until one encounter changed her mind. She had just got done having a party for like 12, 13-year-old kids. They were in there making their little arts and crafts. The party was over. The parents had come to pick everybody up. So she's cleaning off some tables and she's kind of just, doing her thing, and she starts feeling like she's being watched. So she looks up, and about 6 feet away from her is somebody about 12 or 13 years old. It's a girl. So she's kind of startled, but she's like, oh my gosh, did somebody forget their child? But then she noticed she was wearing period clothing, and she could see through her. Now the interesting thing about that is that when she looked up and looked startled, the apparition actually gave her a look like, oh, you can see me? And then dissipated. So after that, she kind of believed in the paranormal, and she would talk about it too. The third place we're going to talk about was called the Menasha Grill. Now the Menasha Grill is no longer there either. It's now a coffee shop. So none of these places exist at the present time. But there was an interesting thing that would happen there, is that they would have dishes and cutlery that wouldn't just like fall off the shelf, it would project off the shelf up to like 4 or 5 feet. One instance that happened there is it was right before closing time. There was one gentleman in the bar, in the restaurant area. There was the cook, and then there was the waitress slash cashier. Everybody was in the dining room because the cashier and the cook were kind of cleaning up, trying to get a head start on cleaning up for the night. So they're sitting there cleaning up, and all of a sudden they notice this guy's getting kind of irritated. Finally, the guy looks at him and he goes, "Come here. Can we help you? Is the food bad? What's wrong?" The guy in the kitchen, can you tell him to stop staring at me? They're like, "There's nobody in the kitchen, sir. There's just you and the two of us." He's like, "Okay." So, they're thinking at this point, maybe he's had a couple too many, he's kind of...
You see a lot of things out of that.
Exactly. So, they actually, got close enough to him, and they were like, "Hey, it doesn't smell like alcohol." About 5 minutes later, he gets really belligerent this time, and he's like, "You know what? If you guys don't tell that guy in the kitchen to stop staring at me, I'm walking out of here. I'm not paying for my food." And they're like, "Sir, let's go back there together." There's nobody back there. So all three of them walked back into the kitchen area, and there was no one there. There's also been an apparition seen up and down Main Street both day and night of people dressed in overalls, white shirts, beanie caps like this, Sometimes carrying a lunch pail, sometimes not. Because of all those paper mills that used to happen, that used to be in this area. So what people are probably seeing is just people going about, you know, no longer here on this earth, but they're walking around up and down Main Street, going back and forth to work. Now, one of the reasons I think that Menasha's got so much paranormal activity is because of the water. Water is a conduit for paranormal activity, and there is a ton of it. We have Lake Winnebago, we have the Fox River, it's Stony Island, it's surrounded by water. So, take it for what you will, but we think, yeah, there's something going on there.